Barattoleen sooraalaa keetu wajjira Kongireesii Ameerikaa keessa jirra. Deemsi siyaasaa Itoophiyaa akkamitti deemuu jira? Keessumattuu jijjiirame ammaan tan mul'atu kun akkamitti deemuu jira? Arma garam deemuu jira? Tan irratti mari'achuuf namni hedduutti walitti dhufuu jira. Namni ammaan tan walitti dhufuu jiru kun miseensota Kongireesii Ameerikaatti Chris Smith, Karen Bass, warri kun cuftii Itoophiyaa dhaqee bulchootaan wal dubbate, bulchoota qofaa miti abbootii siyaasaallee wal dubbate, dargaggoo biyyaallee wal dubbate jijjiirame Itoophiyaa maan arguu jirtanii jedhaniitiin garuu fiilleen waan hawaasii Itoophiyaa jedhullee dhagaa'uuf dhufuu jiran. Fulaan ammaan tan kee jirtulleen nama hedduutti armatti dhufuu jira. Kanaaf waan warri jedhu caqasuuf haram dhumne nulleen waan warri jedhu sanitti himna gabaabsineetiin ansora ala keeti US Capital keessa. Congressman, thank you so very much for taking time to talk to VOA. Briefly, how's your trip to Ethiopia?
It was an excellent trip with a lot of insights. You know, I've been there before where I was there obviously raising human rights issues across the board. Here we're raising some really good hopes about what Prime Minister Abe is doing, Abe I should say, and I think he's doing some very good things. The key for this hearing was to say, you know, you're making progress. We want you to know that Congress, you know, is really supportive to the greatest extent possible, and so we're going to keep that engagement and enlarge upon it.
So listening to ordinary people, I know you've talked to politicians and leaders and youths and with other peoples too. So now you listen to testimonies. What do you say about it?
I would say that, you know, Ethiopia has really had a serious human rights abuse problem for decades. Since April, there's been hope that, you know, there's been a pivot, a real pivot towards reconciliation. The president or the prime minister's inaugural speech was filled with an open hand of friendship to all the disparate groups, the ethnic groups. And I think the more he does that and the more they give him space and compete, you know, it's a democracy, compete for positions, but to do it in the most civil way possible, always respecting the opponent.
So what the ordinary people are saying about the change, are they taking advantage of it, especially the youth?
I always talk to the diaspora here, and they're encouraged, but they've waited a long time for this, so they wanted to move along in a good clip, good pace, and I certainly understand that. And we got to make sure that our part is that there's never a retrenchment. You know, nobody goes back to the bad days when political prisoners just filled the prisons. And we met with a lot of torture victims in Addis, again on this trip, and they told stories that were just mind-boggling as to how they were mistreated, women and men. I mean, some of it's so despicable you can't even talk about it, it's so horrible. And yet they experienced it and they carry the scars of that. So there needs to be an accountability for that. And the idea of truth and reconciliation and peace, you know, holding people to account, but also looking, I mean, as we saw in South Africa, there were a lot of amnesties granted. I forget the number, but about 800 or so of people who came forward. People who have been hurt need to be witnessed and have their story told, and jobs need to be created. You know, 70% of Ethiopia's population is under 30, and there's a great unemployment problem. So, you know, the sooner they are able to tack towards economic growth, the better.
What is your take on that, the formation of reconciliation?
Well, I think it ought to be done. We leave it to the Ethiopians as to what it looks like, who heads it, of course. We want to play a supportive role. A lot of people are calling for it, you know, particularly in the diaspora and the ethnic groups in country. You know, there's some atrocities that don't allow for amnesty. There needs to be, as we've always seen, you commit crimes against humanity, you need to be held to account for that. But there are others who, you know, based on what they decide to do, it might be helpful to move forward.
Still 2.5 million people have been displaced from Oromia, from Somali region, and people who allegedly commit that crime are still on the run. Some have not been brought to justice. So what do you say?
Still a humanitarian crisis that is significant. Of course, there's South Sudanese there as well, escaping South Sudan. But, you know, we being the U.S. government, is being very helpful with food, medicines, humanitarian assistance. USAID has a significant program and a great program of assistance. We lead in Ethiopia on that among all international donors. So I think that's all needs to be sustained and strengthened going forward.
Capacity building is one of the institutions the government is trying to do. How the government, the United States government, is trying to help? In what way you can help the new prime minister?
Capacity building is always a tall order. You don't build up businesses and agro businesses overnight. I believe that the Ethiopians are very resourceful people and have the capabilities to do just about anything, but there has to be a meaningful marrying up of those skills with where the jobs really are. We find all over the world, including here sometimes, people get an education for something that's not out there. You go to get the job and it's like, what did I take that for? So there needs to be a real good sense of business plan for the country. And, one thing that I just throw out, for our veterans here, the most transformative program ever, veterans program, was called the GI Bill. It was written near the end of World War II. A man for the American Legion, the national commander, came up with the idea and put together a group. Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed it into law, and it gave access to higher education to people in the military. And we saw an explosion of people getting the skill base and the education that made the United States of America more prosperous. It also had a home loan program in it so that people could get no down payment loans, which facilitated the building boom. Now, parts of that could be applicable to anywhere in the world, and the Ethiopian has a very capable military. We know with peacekeeping what they do. It's 12,000 plus deployed. They're excellent peacekeepers. There might be some factoring of that educational opportunity, I think, into their military program. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Sorry. Thank you.